years back, everybody, so you have to dig into your memory base. But Nnamdi Asomugha with the Oakland Raiders played one side of the field, and for probably 2 years, maybe 3, was the best corner in the NFL. Hands down, nobody had him. He goes to the Eagles and is told to just cover everybody, and the guy falls apart. He barely even played average, let alone above average or great. And that just is one come to mind. Some players, that's their system, and that's how they play, and that's where they're good at. So you let them play where they're good at. And, you know, the Saints are real bad about bringing in people and trying to make them transition. But, yeah, I definitely get what you're saying about playing one side, because Norman's doing great playing the same type of system that he was doing in Carolina, and they should have paid him and let him stay.
It was a fairly easy thing, or a fairly easy decision that you would think a general manager would make. Okay, we get it. He wasn't going to get $75 million from Carolina. But at the time, I don't think he was asking for $75 million from Carolina, and I think that's the part that kind of, you know, if you're a Panther fan, should burn you up a little bit. It's the idea that I don't think he wanted that kind of money from them. I think Washington overpaid because, of course, at the time, the Saints were trying to get him as well. So I think Washington, in order to make sure they got him, decided that, you know what, $75 million is good enough. I mean, we all remember Drew Brees coming out and saying, for Josh Norman, I would take a smaller deal. Yep. You know, I would sign a contract now. I do whatever we have to do in order for you guys to get him. Because even Drew realized that guy could be a difference maker. And if you could imagine Delvin Breaux and Josh Norman, you pretty much can't throw on that. You don't want to throw on Josh. You don't want to throw on Josh Norman's side because he's locking down one side of the field, and all you have to do is ask him to play half of, his half. And on Delvin Breaux's side, barring the injury, you've got a lockdown corner who does the same. So I think that would have been a great pairing right there. But we'll never know what's going to happen now. But I think in Carolina's case, man, they lost the heart and soul of their defense. Yes, I know Luke Kuechly is the man, and I would never deny that. I know Thomas Davis is a great leader. And I know Shaq, I think Shaq Thompson is, he's trying to come into his own at the weak side but he's a smaller type of weak linebacker. But when it comes to that defense, Josh Norman was their swagger. He was their Cam Newton on defense. He was their mouthpiece. He was the guy that got everybody going. And without him, that's a big loss. And again, I want to point out that last year, the same team that went to the Super Bowl just a few months ago now does not have a single member of that starting secondary. That's a little bit weird.
That's crazy to think about, especially when that was their strength. That was what took them there.
Exactly. Again, they got rid of Bené Benwickery just this coming week because he couldn't cover Julio Jones. By the way, he was coming off an injury, and he admitted that he was winded and he wasn't in football shape, and Carolina got rid of him after Julio Jones put up 300 yards on him, which you can understand. I mean, number one, that's Julio Jones, and number two, you're talking about a guy coming off an injury and you want him to guard Julio Jones. That's not really the best thing. It's not really smart game planning, if you ask me. You let Josh Norman walk because you're rescinding the franchise tag, and now you've got these, Roman Harper. Okay, he's 137 years old. You let him go. We get it. We can understand that. But now you have, first and second year players that are trying to make it, and they can't cut it. They're not ready yet. It's showing, especially with no pass rush, because they haven't had one at that point either. Ely hasn't been playing well. Charles Johnson has been nicked up and injured. Starla Tulele, those guys haven't been able to create pressure up the middle. So it's been a rough one for the Carolina Panthers. It's only going to get tougher this week coming into the Superdome on a short week when the Saints are coming off a bye. Sean Payton usually wins games coming off of a bye week.
We like to say that, but he hasn't really done that the past 2 or 3 years. He struggled with that. He used to be really good off a bye.
Which is true. I can't deny that. The old Sean Payton before Bountygate used to be fairly well coming off of a bye. But this Sean Payton, I guess when Roger Goodell took his heart, he took his balls with him or something. I have no idea what's going on, but Sean Payton isn't the same man that he used to be when it comes to, his aggressiveness. But I still hold out, not even hope, I still hold out a very strong belief that this week, this will be the elixir for the Saints to get right.
Well, I'm trying to hold it back and reserve it personally because that's how I felt about the Atlanta game. I said, regardless of talent, and I do believe that Atlanta has some pieces that are more talented than New Orleans, regardless of talent, we were going to beat Atlanta based on emotion and drive and pride alone, and we got stomped. So I'm withholding saying that about Carolina, especially because it seems Carolina, as I pointed out earlier, they're just that team that beats the Saints. I think in the past 4 years we're 3-7, or the past 5 years we're 3-7 against the Carolina Panthers, and I mean that's tough stats to beat, man.
Here's the stat that I want everybody to pay attention to. It's the number 46, because that's how many penalties Carolina Panthers have right now. 46 penalties. The only team in the NFL that has more penalties right now than Carolina, the Oakland Raiders. And the Oakland Raiders are winning. The reason why I brought up that number is because it shows me something. Carolina's defense isn't the same defense that we're accustomed to seeing. Their offense, it isn't the same offense as far as being that ground and pound. Injuries have taken their toll. And Cam Newton, 2 concussions, and within the first 4 weeks of the season, added to the idea that there's just something missing about that team. They look undisciplined, and that's why I brought up the 46 penalties. They look like an undisciplined team. And Ron Rivera is kind of a military type of guy. One of those hard-nosed guys that doesn't really like the penalties and stuff like that. He's a disciplinarian. And for his team to be showing a lack of discipline tells me a lot about that team right now. They are in disarray, and it's mental. And when you're mentally like that, it's hard to shake. If you're physically depleted, that's one thing. Saints are physically depleted. Carolina right now is mentally whipped, and that's going to show up.
Well, like I said, I hope. I'm not saying you're wrong. Certainly not. But, man, I don't know. This season, I got real deflated by that Atlanta game. So, now I definitely think there's still potential. But I've already kind of moved on to the more, let's see what next year looks like type of idea. But this game's definitely winnable. For me, I was telling everybody, Kobe Fleener's got to step up again. Somebody's got to push those linebackers for Carolina backwards instead of letting them stack the box and rush Drew and stop Ingram. And then defensively, I mean, if Cam's out, they should have a field day feasting on Derek Anderson. How can you not get Derek Anderson for at least 4 sacks in a game? To me, there'd be no excuse for that.
I agree. And here's the thing that I think, I want to kind of keep harping on. And, far be it for me to do something like this. Yeah, right. But, I want to make sure I hammer this home. When I keep saying Carolina is mentally whipped, they're not only mentally whipped from themselves. Give it a week, which is about exactly what they'll have of how everyone will tell them, you're no good.
Uh-huh.
Some people tend to be like, oh, really? I'll show you better.
Yeah.
But when you have a loss like they did, deflating, last seconds of the game, losing to a team that you should have beaten in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because they gave you every opportunity to win that game. Carolina turned the ball over 4 times and Tampa couldn't capitalize. Not in grand fashion. Tampa blew field goals. They had penalties. The Jameis Winston couldn't complete, passes, at a good clip. He only had 1 touchdown thrown in that game. But you lost to a team that you really felt like you should have beat, and you lost to them at home. And that's why I say mentally whipped, because all this week ESPN is going to play it on high levels. Carolina lost. What's wrong with Cam Newton and all this other stuff? And, do the Panthers miss Josh Norman? It's going to be all over the place this entire week, because that's what happens when you're on ESPN. They're a show that shows you clip after clip after clip of the same nonsense, and eventually it's supposed to eat at you. So one or two things is going to happen. Carolina's going to say, okay, we'll go out, we'll beat New Orleans, we'll show them.
Yeah.
Or they're going to start believing what they would believe in. They're going to start believing what the experts are telling them. Maybe we're not good enough. I think it's the latter. I think they're going to look at the fact that they lost to Tampa. They don't have Josh Norman. They're going to look at all these things, and they're going to have a little doubt. And now on a short week, you may not have your leader. On a short week, you're going to go to New Orleans and win a game? I don't think so.
Well, like you said, the odds are definitely stacked against them. And I'm in agreement that we're going to win. I get the feeling that you're hinting at that we're going to blow it out, and I just don't feel the blowout. I'm not saying it's not going to happen or it's not possible. I'm just not feeling it yet. But I do think we win.
I have no idea why I'm on blowout. I think, like I said, maybe it's just the part of me that said, you know what, the Saints needed that win ugly in order to gain confidence. They needed the bye week in order to get just a little bit healthier. Maybe, to have some guys like a Von Bell who doesn't really understand the defense because he hasn't had the snaps to kind of, he knows the classroom part of it, but he never had the actual live snaps in order to kind of be like, okay, well, this is what I'm supposed to do if a tight end and a receiver come at me. Because until you have that scenario play out, you don't know what to do in that situation. Now he does. So maybe the bye week helps with that. Like I said, you get healthier, you learn the playbook a little bit better, you game plan specifically for Carolina. But maybe it's all of the above, or maybe the Saints are just due. But in this scenario, I have no other rhyme or reason for saying I think the Saints will win this game something like 34-17, 34-13. I have no idea for saying it other than I just think they're due. I think Carolina right now, I think if this was any other team in football, and I mean it could be a bad team, it could be like a Cleveland Browns type of team, I wouldn't have taken this to be a blowout win. I just think Carolina right now is suffering with the case of the self-doubt. And self-doubt can be a very, very strong thing for a team because if you don't believe in yourself and you don't believe in the guys, when you look to your left and you look to your right, you don't believe that guy can get it done, problems start. You don't see Cam Newton and the rest of the guys dancing and all of that stuff. You don't see him smiling. In fact, if Cam Newton did play, I'm pretty sure you would see him with the towel on top of his head looking like E.T. again. This is what happens to him when he can't get it done.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he mentioned the whole mental thing going on. I think you definitely can see that in just terms of Saints history that happening. I mean, recent Saints history where young team, especially like last year, just couldn't put it together, and because they were so emotionally beaten, I mean, they just couldn't string together any wins. I mean, and I definitely feel like that's the same thing with the team now that we're talking about beaten. I think you're right. Carolina is mentally beaten. And especially without Cam Newton, that's probably not going to change.
Yeah, and again, I don't know if Cam is going to play. I'm of the idea that he won't, and it makes sense not to. It's their history of doing things when guys are suffering a concussion, and not to mention that. But okay, let's say Cam Newton does play. I don't believe Michael Orr has yet been cleared by the independent doctors for the concussion protocol. So it could possibly be that they're also without their starting left tackle, which could, spell doom for them. I mean, the Saints can't get a lot of pressure, but if you don't have a guy over there that can kind of, get it done, that could be doom for whoever is the quarterback. And, with Cam, it's a little bit easier because he can take off and run. But when you've got Derek Anderson over there, he's not a very nimble guy.
Oh, not at all. Now, I will say it was surprising that Tampa didn't get any sacks on him last night, but he did throw 2 interceptions.
I'm actually not surprised because Tampa themselves had a lot of guys out. Gerald McCoy didn't play.
Yeah,
Noah Spence was playing with a slightly torn rotator cuff. So, some of their key pass rushers wasn't available last night. So it doesn't surprise me that they weren't able to get any pressure, from the D-line. But I'm actually surprised that the linebackers didn't get through. But, like I said, they were injured themselves. So, I mean, when you look at the injury list from that game last night, both teams were without at least 5 to 6 guys that they were counting on. And I believe just today, Tampa put running back Charles Sims on IR, so he'll be done for the rest of the season.
Yep,
so,
he was on my fantasy team.
Yeah, so those guys, are definitely, missing some key pieces as well. And I don't think that they're going to get healthy just quickly enough for them to turn around and come and play the Saints. I don't. But, strange things happen when you got, 2 games coming up on a short week.
Oh, yeah, definitely. The only reason I lean more towards Cam playing is because it goes back to this is the last shot scenario. I mean, even if he's not 100%, if he gets any type of clear, to me, you have to play for the win because nobody wants to have their season over in 6 games. I mean, they have the bye week coming ahead, so there's potential for them to get healthy. But, I mean, like right now, we both know, me and you, because we watch the team enough, we study football enough to know, most likely, and I'm sorry, Saints fans, their season's already over. It just likely is. Now, that can change. There's reason for optimism. But, I mean, we're kind of already in that boat. We just kind of have the chance to get out of it. Whereas Carolina is technically not in it because of the team they have. They're not Super Bowl champs. They did just go to the Super Bowl. But if they lose, they really hit that point of no return. You know, and if the Saints lose, they're actually the same way. I mean, if the Saints go 1